everybody, what's happening? Brent Axe here from syracuse.com. We're live on the Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page. Coming off the heels of a Syracuse football victory, they take down Western Michigan at the Carrier Dome. 52-33 was the final score. Syracuse improves to 2-2 on the 2019 season. They get Holy Cross next week at the Carrier Dome, and then a bye week for the Orange before ACC play begins. We are here thanks to our friends at Krause Health. Great to have you here if you're live, but just a reminder that we do put this on YouTube. If you're watching the YouTube version of this program, thank you for that. We take this live chat that we do after every Syracuse football game. I come right off of Coach Dino Baber's press conference, which we also run on the Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page. So we're here after every game chatting, but if you can't catch it live, we do put it up on YouTube. So make sure you follow Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube. It's also in my recap on syracuse.com as well. You guys get in the comments and tell me what you think about this one. It was a very interesting game in a lot of ways. Tommy DeVito came out of his shell. You guys still want to bench DeVito, or where are we standing on that one, right? The defense, not their best day overall, but made the plays when they had to in the fourth quarter. Alton Robinson wrecking havoc in that backfield. Certain individuals on the defensive side of the ball were great. Collectively, not so great, with Western Michigan putting up over 500 yards and 33 points. It could have been much worse. Syracuse came in missing 4 starters. They're now missing 6. That's something we have to discuss because this is something that Syracuse did really well in last year in terms of staying healthy. They were one of the best teams in the country in turnover margin. They got plenty of turnovers from Western Michigan today. A lot of help from Western Michigan and some bad penalties, particularly on special teams, and some turnovers there. But when you look at it statistically, this is amazing. When Syracuse and Western Michigan get together, the last 2 games between these two, you remember last year they started the season with Western Michigan, 55-42 game there. So if you look at the last 2 games between these two teams, 182 points, 2,283 combined yards. That's pretty incredible that these two teams get together and defense just takes the day off. Syracuse and Western Michigan are scheduled to play a couple more times over the next few years as well. So we'll see if defense ever shows up on either side of the ball for this game. But certainly entertaining, certainly a lot of points scored in this one. And, you know, you got to point right at Tommy DeVito for coming out of his shell today. He's had a rough go of it so far. There's no question he had some bad turnovers. Last week against Clemson, the week before that against Maryland, even against Liberty, we didn't really see Tommy kind of at his best. This was his best game of the year, completion percentage-wise, touchdown-wise. And the big thing with DeVito is showed off those legs today. Coach Babers was discussing it at his press conference that he wants Tommy to be very careful when he runs the football. As a matter of fact, I asked Coach Babers this week on the radio. He joins me weekly on ESPN Radio Syracuse, and I said, Coach, just how green is the light for Tommy DeVito to run the football when the opportunity presents itself? And Dino did not want to answer that question. He kind of deferred on that and then kind of gave a general answer about, you know, the quarterbacks having to make smart decisions. Well, he had the green light today. Second play from scrimmage, he fakes a pitch, goes 60 yards up the field, ran for a touchdown today. This kid's got jets when he gets in the open field. He's not as apt to run in certain situations as Eric Dungy is. He's not the same quarterback as Dungy, but you got to take what the defense gives you. And that was a smart play on DeVito's front. That's learning. You look at Tommy, this was his 4th start as a quarterback, and you say, what are you learning from that you didn't in the previous games? Well, he looked on film, and he saw opportunities to run. Western Michigan's defense, certainly not the best that Syracuse is going to face. So it comes down to basics. You take what the defense gives you. So he also, on the ground today, rushes for 85 yards. Now, if you factor out sack yardage, he actually rushed for over 100 yards himself. Syracuse's leading rusher was Mo Neal. They needed that running game to get going. And even with another injury on the offensive line today, the running game got going, and certainly the passing game got going in this game for the Orange. Mo Neal finishes with 123 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. Abdul Adams had 31 yards on the ground. Huge special teams play for him. He also had a fumble, which Western Michigan recovered, but huge special teams play that he recovered a fumble on. Tristan Jackson, I think we know who the number 1 receiver on this team is. He stepped up today, 141 yards, 2 touchdowns, some huge plays, not only getting open deep, but some catches and runs. As one of his touchdown runs, 47 yards, caught it in traffic, fighting off guys, stiff-arming defenders. He had a terrific day. It was good to see Syracuse get the tight end involved. Aaron Hackett had 48 yards on 6 catches. He had 2 touchdowns on the day. Taj Harris with 38 yards. All told, Tommy DeVito connected with 9 different receivers today. It was good to see him spreading the football out. Now, we mentioned the defense overall didn't have the best day. We'll give you some overall stats here in a moment, but you were missing the best safety in the ACC and one of the best safeties in college football, and Andre Cisco today. He was out of this game. Ife Melifonwu, who has been great for Syracuse in pass coverage this season, he was out today. They eventually lost Antoine Cordy in this game as well, so we'll see what all their statuses are going forward. Frankly, when you have Holy Cross and a bye week coming up, don't put them out there unless you absolutely feel that they're healthy enough to be on the field. So that's the good news for Syracuse health-wise, is they've really essentially got 2 weeks to heal up with an easy game next week, the sacrificial lamb from the Patriot League Holy Cross, and then the bye week before they play on a Thursday night against NC State. So Cordy went out, but he was terrific filling in today. I think Evan Foster made some big plays. He actually led the team in tackles today with 8. We brought up how much of a force Alton Robinson was in the backfield. They put a lot of pressure on John Wassink, the Western Michigan quarterback, and I got to give him credit for the amount of plays he was able to make on the run, under duress. He's a mobile quarterback, and he certainly made the plays when he had to there. So those were some of the standouts defensively for Syracuse. For Western Michigan, we mentioned John Wassink, their quarterback, 23 of 46 threw a pick and 2 touchdowns on the day, 356 yards overall. Injuries really wreaked havoc on Western Michigan. Levante Bellamy put up 165 yards and 2 touchdowns before he left the game late in the third quarter with an injury. Dwayne Erickson, their unbelievable two-way player, or Eskridge, pardon me. Eskridge gets hurt early in the game. He managed 2 catches for 53 yards before that, including a huge 43-yard play. He torched Syracuse for, I believe, over 200 yards last year, and came into the game, was looking like he was going to be a factor on both sides of the ball. He went out with an injury as well. So injury is certainly a factor there, but Bellamy did some damage before he left. That kid is one of the fastest running backs in college football. So Syracuse struggled against the run. It's interesting that Bellamy did well. Maryland ran the ball well. Travis Etienne, Heisman Trophy candidate, one of the best running backs in college football, wasn't much of a factor last week against Clemson. So, go figure there. So total, both teams at 25 first downs. Listen to all these offensive numbers. Syracuse at 258 yards rushing. Western Michigan went over 200 yards on the ground. On the receiving end, Western Michigan 356 yards, 287 for the Orange. All told, Syracuse ran 82 plays for 545 yards. Western Michigan ran 80 plays for 557 yards. We told you about those combined numbers the last 2 years. You're going to get a lot of offense when these two get together. Syracuse had 11 penalties on the day for 103 yards. Obviously, that's not good, something they have to clean up. It felt like Western Michigan had a heck of a lot more than this, but they ended up with 8 penalties for 80 yards, several on special teams, several roughing plays. They were a train wreck on special teams. They missed a extra point. They missed a field goal. They had several penalties. They muffed a punt, which Syracuse ended up recovering and cashed in some points on. So Tim Lester, the former Orange offensive coordinator, has got a lot of work to improve the special teams. On third down, things were pretty even. Syracuse was 8 of 16. Western Michigan was 7 of 16. Western Michigan went for it on fourth down 5 times. They converted just 1 of those plays. So we mentioned it, as much as the Syracuse defense struggled for a good chunk of this game, they made 3 straight stops in the fourth quarter when they really needed it. So more of a quality over quantity situation there for the Orange defense. So all told, they win this one 52-33. And now they get ready for an easy one next week against Holy Cross and a bye week. So hopefully a few weeks here to really work out the kinks, get healthy where they need to on the field, and get ready for the start of ACC play on Thursday the 10th against NC State. All right, let's see what you guys are saying here in the comments. Appreciate you coming by and chatting with us here today. John notes that Western Michigan likes to throw the ball all over the field. It's not surprising they had a lot of yards, just worried about injuries and winning conference games. What I think that can apply, though, John, is that Western Michigan, and Tim Lester, as we know, is a very good offensive coach. They were attacking the soft zone of the Syracuse defense. Missed tackles, big problem for the Orange today. Levante Bellamy makes a lot of people miss. He's a terrific running back, but missed tackles continue to be an issue in the running game. They're attacking weak spots in the zone. You brought up the injuries. When you don't have Cisco out there, you don't have Iffy out there, that's going to affect things on the defensive end. Certainly, there's work to be done on defense. I'm not excusing the issues they had today, but you said it. Western Michigan can score a lot of points on a lot of people, Syracuse included. Defense has some improvement to make, though, for sure. Clayton says that Wake Forest looks dangerous. Clayton, the ACC is wild, isn't it? I mean, Clemson is on their own island. And then after that, who's the second best team in the league? It might be Wake Forest. It might be North Carolina. It might be Virginia, certainly, who's been in the top 25. But I think you can kind of just take all the rest of the names in the ACC and toss them in the air and see where they land. So what you have is a wide-open league. That could be an opportunity for Syracuse. It also could be pretty scary going into an ACC that Syracuse has not pulled away from. We thought this was the year they kind of pull away from the pack and really give Clemson a run for their money in terms of who the best team in the Atlantic is. I did not have any illusions of Syracuse taking down Clemson or claiming that title, but what you wanted to see was a little separation, that Syracuse was clearly one of the better teams in this league. They still have an opportunity to do that, but right now it is wide open at this point. Wayne says it's nice to see the offense get going a bit today. The offensive line is getting better. It'll be nice to fix some errors against Holy Cross, have players hopefully healed up after that game and the bye, and then into ACC play. You got to give the offensive line credit today. They opened up some running holes. Ryan Alexander got hurt. They fought through that. They, again, had their issues. DeVito was sacked, I think, 3 times today, but under a lot less duress than the past few weeks. They adjusted. They got rid of the ball quickly. They got the ball out in the flat. They utilized the running backs in the passing game. We mentioned how they got Aaron Beckett involved, the tight end today. DeVito looked a lot more confident. When you give this kid an extra second or two to see what he's got, deliver the football, a beautiful strike to Tristan Jackson in the end zone, a lot of shorter throws that were crisp, that were sharp, that were on the money. This is DeVito at his best. This is, again, a different situation than Eric Dungy, but Syracuse really needed a game like this overall, but he in particular needed a game where he could feel like, yeah, I can still play this game. I can go out there, I can sling this thing a little bit, 4 touchdowns. He rushes for a touchdown, huge 60-yard run, big confidence booster for Tommy DeVito. And it's much more important that he did it this week than next week. Next week is empty calories. Next week almost doesn't matter. Holy Cross, you don't learn anything against that team. I can't believe that game's even on the schedule. 5 games into the year? That's just how it works out sometimes. Syracuse did want to ease back a little bit on the out of conference, but playing Holy Cross, a 5th game into the year, it really doesn't do anything for you. It's just making up for lost time that you don't get preseason football in the college game, right? Let's see. Mapster says that SU did pull it off, but that Clemson game, the defense should have pressured the quarterback. It looked like they were playing Pop Warner. Hopefully the blitz can slow down quarterbacks and running backs as they go through the year. Kevin notes that the defensive backfield definitely needs Cisco and Iffy indefinitely. Yeah, those are 2 really good players. They need them out there. But Christopher Frederick gave up that 1 big touchdown today, and there was a little confusion about where the ball was going, and there was kind of a second where nobody knew where the ball was, and the receiver took off and ran for Western Michigan. But I think he also made some great pass breakups, and he's getting a lot better. There's some talented players in that secondary. I thought Coleman stepped up today. I thought Bradshaw had a bad defensive pass interference. He made some plays. I mentioned how good Cordy was before he got hurt. But to be competitive, yeah, you definitely need Cisco and Iffy out there as the competition gets a little closer. Jeff notes, do you like what you see from Jones so far? I love what I see from him, Jeff. I'll pull up the stats while we're yakking about him here, but I know he was pretty active today. Know that he had a few tackles out there. Let's see here. Syracuse defense. Let's pull it up. Jones, yeah, he had 6 tackles today. Now, they've got to make a decision about him in terms of, status, eligibility, how many games he plays, but he's been great. He's been terrific, and it's a linebacking crew that had its bad moments today, but Armstrong made a big tackle. Lakeem Williams had a big sack down the stretch for Syracuse. They're kind of finding their way. They're kind of the main culprit in terms of bad tackling and letting running backs break through. But I like what I see a lot out of Jones. I think he's a future star for this team. I'm glad you brought him up, by the way, Jeff, because he had a terrific game today. Christopher says, after the scare against Nova, I don't look past any one AA program anymore. Fair to feel that way, Christopher. Villanova is kind of a different story. They're one of the best programs at that level and have been historically, and We even said that at the time. It's like, look, if you're going to schedule a Division I AA team, don't schedule them. And that game was very, very close, as we remember a few years ago, back to the Scott Schaefer era in that one. But Holy Cross, not a game and a team that I'm too concerned about at all. Torrance says, how do you think the Orange were affected by the first two games on the road? That's a great question, because you go to Liberty, which is kind of, off the beaten trail, not your average road trip. They won that game 24-0, won it with ease. For the most part, defense held them, to -4 rushing yards. And then they go on the road for a second game. The Maryland game, I don't think it was necessarily that they were on the road. It was just their confidence was blasted in that game, particularly on the defensive end when you give up 63 points, all the rushing yards and all the big plays that they gave up to Maryland. And then you get Clemson after that. Not a lot of opportunity to get a team back on track and gain your confidence back. The defense had a couple of turnovers and put Syracuse in position to at least be a little more competitive in that game. It's not ideal, but I think that, and next year is going to be the same case. And, with them renovating the Carrier Dome, can I say Carrier? They're going to start on the road for the next couple of years just to make sure all the construction and everything they're doing, they have time to kind of wrap up what they have to do. I mean, even if you come to a game in Syracuse these days, you've got cranes and all sorts of construction equipment and barriers, and parking is a little bit more interesting these days because there's not only a lot of construction going on at the Dome, there's a lot of construction going on campus, period. So I don't think it really affected them in that sense, but it's something we're going to have to get used to over the next couple of years because of the construction going on at the Dome. Scott brought up Villanova. Holy Cross isn't Villanova. That's what I'll say about that. They are not Villanova. Andy says, are the punter and kicker playing on Sundays? No question about it. Sterling Hoff-Richter is one of the best punters in college football. Getting drafted is not always easy for a kicker, but I think he could certainly go the Riley Dixon route, get it picked in the 6th or 7th round. That kid is absolutely going to stick on an NFL roster. And I think Andre Schmidt, who's got a few more years here, probably is going to bust open a lot of records before he does it, is certainly going to kick in the National Football League as well. Christopher brings this up. It is off Syracuse football, but it's a very interesting thing. So he says off topic a bit, but man, you got to think Jim Harbaugh is gone. Would Michigan come after Dino? What was the final score of that game? I didn't even see, but holy cow, Wisconsin just trucked Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. Harbaugh doesn't win any big games at that school. Would Michigan come after Dino? I think he'd be on the list. I don't ultimately think they'd end up settling on Dino. Maybe Dino's desirability in some of these coaching searches has waned after that loss to Clemson and Maryland, which is good news for Syracuse. Syracuse just gave him that contract extension, another 5 years on that deal, right? By the way, there was a huge donation made today. I don't know if you guys saw the news of this. We got a story up on syracuse.com about this. Former Syracuse football player John Lally, who played in the late 70s, early 80s, actually blocked for Joe Morris back in the day. He and his wife donated $25 million to Syracuse University, and that money is going to be earmarked for football, for facility, for administration, for coaches. He's a football guy, and a lot of that money, if not all of it, they're going to announce more details on this later on in the fall. But that is a gift with football in mind, and this is a guy who really likes what Dino Babers is doing here. So they gave Dino an extension here. They're putting more money into facilities. Obviously, the renovation, as we talked about at the Carrier Dome, like everything you need to succeed is all in place here at Syracuse. But $25 million gift. That's incredible to think about, and that's where Syracuse football is at. A lot of alums are excited. They like what they see and what Dino's doing here, and they want to help support it, and that's what it's going to take. Let's see. Wayne notes that Pitt is handling UCF so far, 21-0 score in that game. Wisconsin ended up winning 35-14, by the way. Wow. Jim Harbaugh, his days are numbered at Michigan. The only thing that's going to save him, and if he lasts, is if they beat Ohio State. And he hasn't even done that. So Jim Harbaugh could do no wrong. 2 or 3 years ago was the golden boy of college football. They threw a bunch of money at him, and now he's on the hot seat at Wisconsin. You got to win big games. Name me a couple big games that guy has won. If so, it's a very short list. He hasn't beaten Ohio State. He's losing to all the big teams in the Big Ten. It's incredible to think about at this point, but that's college football for you. You're a darling one day, and you're damned the next, right? Christopher says that he gave $50 to Syracuse last week. It all adds up, man. Not quite $25 million, but it all adds up. Appreciate you doing that. We should start a GoFundMe and see how that does for Syracuse football, right? Okay, what do you say we wrap it up about there, guys? Always appreciate you coming by and chatting. We'll be right back here next week. Another noon kickoff against Holy Cross. Should be a pretty easy day for Syracuse, but as they say, that's why they play the games. But as soon as Dino's press conference is over, which we also run on the Syracuse Orange Football Facebook page, I'll be with you here chatting on Facebook. And just a reminder, we do put this on YouTube as well. I want to plug a little bit. We've got a couple of podcasts, if you guys are into that kind of thing, that I'd love for you to listen to download. If you go to iTunes and you subscribe to syracuse.com podcasts, I do a podcast called the Syracuse Sports Podcast. My latest guest is sportscaster Adam Shine, a Syracuse alum who may be the busiest sportscaster in the world, does Mad Dog Sports Radio. He does CBS Sports Network, all kinds of television shows there, a podcast. He writes for NFL.com. Passionate Syracuse alum. You may remember did some radio here in Central New York as well. So he was my recent guest, but I talked to John Wildhack recently, a few other guests I think you guys would be into. Plus, Stephen Bailey, our football reporter, is doing a podcast twice a week. It's called the Syracuse Football Podcast. That's with Julian Wiggum, former Orangeman. They have guests on as well. They had Tim Lester this past week ahead of this Western Michigan game. So you can find it on syracuse.com or wherever you subscribe to your podcasts, be it iTunes or Spotify or Stitcher. Just look for syracuse.com podcasts, subscribe, and you'll get all that great content. So we'd appreciate if you guys would check that out as well. In the meantime, thanks for hanging with us today. Thanks to our friends at Krause Health. We'll be back next week. Syracuse beats Western Michigan today, 52-33. We'll catch you next time here on Facebook Live.